What happens when Hollywood's golden thunder god walks onto the most unpredictable daytime stage in America? And the conversation turns from playful to personal in a single heartbeat. Before we dive in, make sure you hit subscribe to Stage View right now, like this video, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because today's story is one you won't want to miss. The studio lights of the View burn bright that morning, casting a polished glow across the iconic round table. The audience buzzes with anticipation. There's laughter in the air, a ripple of excitement, because today's guest isn't just another actor on a press tour. He's a global superstar, a symbol of strength, a man whose on-screen presence has shattered box offices and whose off-screen persona radiates calm confidence. When Chris Hemsworth steps out from backstage, the applause is immediate, thunderous, almost ironic considering the character that made him a household name. Tall, relaxed, dressed in a sharp navy blazer with effortless charisma, he smiles and waves. He looks at ease, unshakable. Across the table sits Whoopi Goldberg, composed, observant, her expression unreadable. A veteran of stage and screen, an Oscar winner, a woman known for cutting through fluff with surgical precision. At first, it's light. "Chris, welcome," one of the co-hosts beams. Hemsworth laughs softly. "Thank you for having me. It's good to be here." The audience sighs collectively. He's charming, disarming, exactly what they expect. Whoopi leans forward slightly. "You've played gods, warriors, heroes. But who are you when the cape comes off?" It's an easy question. Or at least it sounds like one. Chris smiles. "Just a dad, mostly. A husband. I try to keep it simple." Polite applause. But Whoopi doesn't smile back. She tilts her head. Simple is interesting, especially when you're part of an industry that isn't simple at all. The tone shifts, barely noticeable but real. The co-hosts glance at each other. Chris nods. That's fair. The conversation drifts into the usual promotional territory. His latest project. His training routine. The discipline required to maintain the physique audiences have come to associate with heroism. "You set a standard that's intimidating," Whoopi says, her voice steady. "Not just for men in Hollywood. For men everywhere." A murmur moves through the audience. Chris pauses for half a second longer than before. "I think it's important to remember movies aren't real life. It's a job, a role. But the image is real," Whoopi counters. "Young boys see it. Grown men see it. And suddenly masculinity looks like 6% body fat and a hammer." A few claps. A few uncomfortable laughs. Chris shifts in his chair, still smiling, but his eyes narrow just slightly. "I've always tried to talk about balance. About health." Whoopi doesn't blink. "Health or pressure? There it is." The air tightens. One co-host tries to soften it. "I think what Whoopi's saying is there's a bigger cultural impact." "I understand," Chris says gently, though the gentleness feels practiced now. "But we also can't pretend audiences don't know the difference between a superhero movie and real life." Whoopi folds her hands. "You'd be surprised what people internalize." The audience quiets. The playful morning show rhythm is gone. Now it feels like something else. A debate. A test. Chris leans forward slightly. "With respect, I don't think portraying strength is inherently harmful." "And with respect," Whoopi replies, her voice calm but firm, "strength comes in many forms. But Hollywood tends to sell only one." A ripple of applause. Chris nods again, but this time there's a flicker behind his composure. "I agree strength is multifaceted. But I don't think playing a character that embodies physical strength cancels out emotional depth." Whoopi studies him. "And yet," she says slowly, "when you speak about discipline and pushing limits, some hear never enough." The silence is louder than any applause. Chris inhales, then smiles, but it's tighter now. "I can't control how every message is interpreted. I can only speak from my own experience." "And what is that experience?" Whoopi asks. He hesitates. "Just a fraction. That training taught me resilience. Focus. It's not about perfection. It's about commitment." Whoopi's gaze doesn't waver. "Commitment to what? An image?" The audience gasps lightly. One co-host jumps in. "Okay, let's pivot a little." But the pivot doesn't come. Chris chuckles softly, though there's no humor in his eyes. "I think we're giving a fictional character a lot of power." "Fiction influences reality," Whoopi says. "Always has." The tension is palpable now. Cameras zoom slightly closer. Producers backstage exchange glances. Chris straightens. Then maybe the responsibility isn't just on actors. Maybe it's on audiences to separate fantasy from self-worth. The crowd reacts, some clapping, some murmuring. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. That sounds like passing the buck. There it is again. That edge. Chris's jaw tightens, barely perceptible. No. It sounds like acknowledging that art isn't instruction. It's expression. A few louder claps now, supporters in the audience. Whoopi leans back. An expression doesn't exist in a vacuum. For a moment, they just look at each other. Two titans. Different worlds. Different philosophies. The temperature in the room feels like it's rising. Then Whoopi shifts gears, but not away from confrontation. Let's talk about something else, she says. You've spoken about stepping back from certain roles after learning about genetic health risks. The audience quiets again. Chris nods slowly. Yes, that was vulnerable, Whoopi says. That was powerful. Her tone softens slightly. But some critics said it was also packaged. Marketed. Part of a narrative. Chris blinks. A narrative? That even fear becomes content now. The words hang heavy. For the first time, Chris doesn't immediately respond. The studio feels smaller. The applause sign remains dark. Finally, he speaks. Are you suggesting I shared something personal for publicity? Whoopi doesn't flinch. I'm asking how you separate authenticity from branding in an industry that monetizes both. A collective inhale from the audience. Chris's voice lowers. That health information changed how I see my life. My family. It wasn't branding. Then why announce it on camera? Whoopi presses. The co-host beside her shifts uncomfortably. Whoopi. No, it's okay, Chris says, though his tone has lost its earlier warmth. I chose to share it because I thought it might encourage people to get tested, to think about their futures. Or, Whoopi says carefully, because vulnerability sells. The word sells echoes. A woman in the audience whispers, "Oh my God." Chris exhales sharply. That's a cynical way to look at it. Experience teaches cynicism, Whoopi replies evenly. The clash is no longer subtle. Chris's composure cracks, not explosively, but enough to reveal something raw beneath. With all due respect, questioning someone's intentions when they talk about their health, that's a dangerous road. Whoopi's eyes soften for a split second, but only a split second. And ignoring how celebrity shapes public perception is also dangerous. Silence. No music. No laughter. Just the hum of studio lights and the weight of two perspectives colliding. One co-host finally steps in. I think what we're seeing is a larger conversation about fame and responsibility. But the spark has already caught. Chris leans back, folding his hands. I believe in accountability, but I also believe in good faith. Whoopi nods slowly. Good faith goes both ways. Their eyes lock again. The audience is split, some nodding at Whoopi's sharp skepticism, others visibly sympathetic toward Chris's defense. What was meant to be a promotional appearance has transformed into something else entirely, a philosophical standoff broadcast live to millions. And this is only the beginning. The tension doesn't dissolve when the cameras cut to commercial. It lingers, heavy and electric, like the air before a storm. The red on air sign dims, but no one moves. Chris Hemsworth reaches for his water glass, his fingers steady, but his jaw tight. Across the table, Whoopi Goldberg adjusts her cards with deliberate calm, her expression unreadable. The audience murmurs in low waves. Some are whispering excitedly. Others look stunned, as if they just witnessed something that wasn't supposed to happen on a mid-morning talk show. A producer leans in toward Whoopi, speaking in hushed tones. Another moves toward Chris, offering a reassuring smile. But reassurance feels thin right now. One of the co-hosts forces a laugh. Well, that was lively. Chris smiles politely, but it doesn't reach his eyes. I don't mind lively. Whoopi glances at him. Good. The word lands between them like a chess piece placed with intention. 30 seconds. 20. The countdown to going live again begins flashing silently from the stage manager's hands. 15 seconds. Chris rolls his shoulders subtly, as if preparing for a physical challenge rather than a conversation. Years of playing warriors have trained his body to brace for impact. But this isn't choreography. There's no script to fall back on now. 5 seconds. The red light flickers back on. And just like that, they're live again on The View. The applause sign lights up, urging the audience to reset the energy. Some clap enthusiastically. Others hesitate. Whoopi turns toward the camera with seasoned ease. Welcome back. We're here with Chris Hemsworth. She says his name evenly, without edge, but without warmth. Chris nods toward the audience. Happy to still be here. A few scattered laughs break the tension. One co-host jumps in quickly. Chris, your new film explores vulnerability in a very different way than your superhero roles. Can you tell us about that? It's an olive branch. Chris takes it. Yeah, it's a smaller story. Less about physical strength. More about emotional resilience. Whoopi's eyebrow lifts slightly. Emotional resilience, she repeats. He nods. Yeah, a man confronting his past. Regret. Loss. And how did you prepare for that? She asks. The question sounds neutral, but there's something beneath it. Chris leans forward. I talk to people who've experienced similar things. I listened more than I spoke. Tried to understand pain that isn't visible. Whoopi tilts her head. So pain doesn't always look like 6% body fat. The audience gasps, some laughing nervously, others clapping at the callback. Chris exhales slowly. No, it doesn't. There's a beat of silence. And yet, Whoopi continues, the industry still rewards the visible. Chris studies her carefully now. The polite guest persona is thinning, revealing something more direct. The industry rewards what audiences pay to see, he replies. And audiences are shaped by what the industry feeds them. Whoopi counters immediately. The rhythm is faster now. Sharper. A co-host interjects, trying to mediate. It's kind of a cycle, right? Supply and demand. But who starts it? Whoopi asks, turning slightly toward her. Chris answers before anyone else can. It's not that simple. No, Whoopi challenges. No, he says firmly. Because I didn't wake up one day and decide, let me define masculinity for the world. I took a role. I did my job. And when that role made billions, Whoopi asks, when it influenced a generation? He doesn't flinch this time. Then I tried to use that platform responsibly. How? She presses. The audience leans forward collectively. Chris's voice lowers. By speaking about mental health. By talking about family. By stepping away when I needed to. Stepping away, Whoopi repeats. Or strategically retreating? The words slice through the air. The co-host beside Whoopi visibly stiffens. Okay. No, Chris says quietly. Let's not twist this. His calm is different now. Not defensive. Not performative. Focused. I didn't strategically retreat. I reassessed my priorities. Whoopi folds her hands again. Because of health concerns. Which were announced publicly. Yes, he says. And turned into a docuseries. There it is. A ripple moves through the audience like a wave. Chris nods once. Yes. So you can understand, Whoopi says carefully, why some people question the line between personal growth and profitable storytelling. For the first time, there's no sarcasm in her tone. Just blunt honesty. Chris holds her gaze. I understand the question. I just don't agree with the assumption. And what assumption is that? She asks. That vulnerability equals manipulation. The audience claps softly at that. Whoopi's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in scrutiny. And you're saying it doesn't? I'm saying, Chris replies steadily, that sharing something difficult doesn't automatically make it a marketing ploy. The silence that follows is thick. Then Whoopi leans forward. Let me ask you something personal, she says. Chris nods cautiously. When you told the world about your genetic risk, did you ever worry that it would redefine you? That instead of being seen as strong, you'd be seen as fragile? The question shifts the tone entirely. Chris pauses. This isn't about branding anymore. He inhales slowly. Yes. The audience quiets completely. Yes, he repeats. I worried about that. Whoopi watches him closely. I've built a career on strength, he continues. Physicality. Control. And suddenly I was talking about something I can't control. His voice softens, just a fraction. And that's terrifying. For a brief moment, the tension eases. Whoopi nods slowly. That's honest. Chris meets her eyes. It is. But honesty, she says, can still exist inside a machine. The word machine hangs heavy, Hollywood. Chris leans back slightly. So what would you have preferred? That I keep it private? I'm asking, Whoopi says calmly, whether fame changes the meaning of honesty. The audience murmurs thoughtfully now, less reactive, more contemplative. Chris thinks for a moment before answering. Maybe it does, he admits. Maybe everything gets magnified. But that doesn't make it fake. And it doesn't make it pure, Whoopi replies. Their words are no longer sharp. They're philosophical, almost surgical. A co-host finally steps in again. I think what's fascinating here is how rare it is to see this kind of real-time debate on daytime TV. A few laughs break out. Chris smiles faintly. Trust me, I didn't expect this either. Whoopi allows herself a small smile. Neither did I, she admits. But the tension isn't gone. It's evolved. One audience member suddenly calls out, "We love you, Chris." Applause erupts from one section of the crowd. Another voice shouts, "Ask the hard questions, Whoopi." The studio splits audibly. Whoopi glances toward the audience. See? Passion. Chris nods. That's good. Passion means people care. Or that they're divided, she says. Division isn't always bad, he replies. It can mean people are thinking. Whoopi studies him again, as if recalibrating. You're very controlled, she observes. Chris chuckles lightly. Occupational hazard. Do you ever lose it? She asks suddenly. The question feels spontaneous. Dangerous. He raises an eyebrow. On talk shows. A ripple of laughter. No, Whoopi says. In life. Chris considers this. Yes, he says finally. I'm human. Then what makes you angry? She asks. There's a pause. A real one. Being misunderstood, he says quietly. The room stills. Whoopi's gaze softens again, but only slightly. And do you feel misunderstood right now? She asks. The cameras zoom in just a touch. Chris doesn't look away. A little, he admits. The honesty lands heavier than any sharp retort could have. Whoopi nods slowly. That wasn't my intention, she says. And for the first time since the clash began, there's a crack in the armor on both sides. But the storm hasn't fully passed. Because the question now isn't just about image or branding or vulnerability. It's about perception. And perception, once challenged on live television, has a way of spiraling far beyond the studio walls. The atmosphere in the studio has changed. It's no longer a clash. It's something deeper, more dangerous. Not anger, exposure. The cameras are still rolling on The View, but the usual daytime rhythm is gone. There's no easy laughter now. No safe promotional banter. What's unfolding feels unscripted, unpredictable, and impossible to edit in real time. Chris Hemsworth sits straighter in his chair, no longer leaning into charm. He's present, grounded, alert. Across from him, Whoopi Goldberg watches with the patience of someone who has spent decades reading rooms, reading people, reading truth between words. The silence after his admission, a little, still lingers. Whoopi breaks it gently. Tell me how. Chris inhales slowly. It's strange, he begins. You spend years building something. A career. A public identity. And then you realize that the identity doesn't fully belong to you anymore. The audience listens, completely still. It belongs to headlines, to expectations, to narratives that aren't yours. Whoopi nods slightly. Fame does that. But here's the thing, Chris continues. You can either fight it, or you can try to shape it. And which did you do? She asks. He doesn't hesitate this time. I tried to shape it. And that, Whoopi says carefully, is where some people get uneasy. The word uneasy floats between them. Chris tilts his head. Because shaping perception, she replies, can look like controlling it. A few murmurs ripple through the crowd. Chris's expression tightens, not defensive but sharpened. I don't control how people think, he says. I share my experience. That's it. But your experience carries weight, Whoopi counters. Influence. Power. And you think I'm misusing that power? He asks quietly. The question isn't combative. It's direct. Whoopi pauses. I think, she says slowly, choosing each word with care, that celebrity culture blurs sincerity and strategy. Chris leans forward. And you think I'm strategy? I think you're smart, she answers. The studio reacts softly, a low hum of tension. Chris almost smiles. That's not an accusation. It's not a compliment either, she says evenly. One of the co-hosts shifts uncomfortably in her chair. I think what people admire about Chris is that he appears grounded, family-oriented, intentional. Appears, Whoopi repeats. The emphasis lands. Chris hears it. I am grounded, he says calmly. By what? Whoopi asks immediately. My family, he replies. Perspective. Knowing that none of this, he gestures subtly to the studio, the cameras, is permanent. And yet you participate in it, she says. Of course I do, he answers. It's my profession. The audience is divided again, some nodding with Chris, others clearly resonating with Whoopi's skepticism. Whoopi leans back slightly, studying him as though peeling back layers. You know what fascinates me, she says. What's that? Chris asks. That the strongest men on screen often struggle the most when strength is questioned. The words are soft, but they land like a hammer. A faint gasp from somewhere in the audience. Chris doesn't react immediately. Instead, he takes a slow breath. Strength isn't the absence of doubt, he says finally. No, Whoopi agrees. But it is the absence of fragility. His eyes sharpen. And what makes you think I'm fragile? The temperature shifts again. Whoopi doesn't flinch. I don't, she says calmly. I'm asking if you do. Silence. The audience is completely locked in now. Chris looks down briefly, then back up. There's a difference between vulnerability and fragility, he says. Explain it, she says. Vulnerability is choosing to show uncertainty, he replies. Fragility is being broken by it. A beat. And you're not broken? Whoopi asks. No, he says firmly. Not even a little? The question hovers. Chris smiles faintly. We're all broken a little, he says. The audience exhales collectively. Whoopi's eyes soften again. That's the first thing you've said today that isn't guarded. The comment hangs heavy. Chris absorbs it. You think I've been guarded? He asks. I think you're very careful, she replies. Is that a flaw? In this chair, she gestures to the host's seat. No. In that one, she gestures toward his. Maybe. The crowd reacts with a low oh. Chris laughs, but it's quieter now. You know, he says, it's interesting. You're challenging me for being calculated. But you're one of the most calculated interviewers in television. The audience erupts, a mix of laughter and shocked applause. Whoopi smiles slowly. That's my job. And mine, Chris replies, is to navigate conversations like this without being turned into a headline. There it is. The real fear. Whoopi studies him carefully. You're worried about the clip, she says. I'm aware of the clip, he corrects. A few knowing chuckles from the audience. In today's world, he continues, 10 seconds can redefine a person. And yet, Whoopi says, you've benefited from that same system. Chris nods once. I have. The honesty surprises some in the crowd. And I'm grateful, he adds. But that doesn't mean I don't see its flaws. Then why not challenge it, she presses. I am, he replies. By having this conversation. The words settle in the air. Whoopi tilts her head. Or by surviving it, she asks. A flicker crosses Chris's face. That one hits closer. The audience is completely silent now, not divided, not murmuring. Just watching. He leans forward again. You want honesty? He says quietly. I always do, she replies. Fine, he says. He exhales. I walked in here expecting a promotional interview. Friendly questions. Safe ground. And instead, I feel like I'm defending my integrity. A ripple of reaction spreads through the audience. Whoopi's voice stays even. No one's attacking your integrity. It feels like it, he says. There it is again, that raw edge. Whoopi nods slowly. Then that's worth exploring. Why, he asks. Because discomfort reveals truth. The statement hangs heavy. Chris studies her, searching for hostility, but finding something else. Curiosity. Challenge. Maybe even respect. You don't make it easy, he says. I'm not supposed to, she replies. A few audience members clap. Chris lets out a slow breath and leans back. Okay, he says. Then let's make it real. The entire studio seems to lean in. You're right, he continues. There are times I've worried about image. About staying relevant. About keeping the machine running. The word machine echoes back from earlier. Whoopi notices. And, she prompts. And that pressure isn't always healthy, he admits. The honesty lands. But, he continues, that doesn't invalidate the genuine parts. Both can exist, Whoopi says quietly. Yes, he agrees. Both can exist. The tension shifts, not gone, but transformed. This isn't a battle anymore. It's a reckoning. One co-host, sensing the moment, speaks gently. This is probably one of the most candid interviews we've had in a long time. The audience applauds softly. Chris glances at Whoopi. You wanted honesty, he says. I did, she replies. And you got it. A small smile forms on her face. I did. For the first time since the confrontation began, the energy in the room feels less combative and more electric in a different way. The way it feels when something authentic breaks through performance. But authenticity on live television comes with consequences. And outside these studio walls, millions are watching, clipping, posting, choosing sides. The real storm isn't in this room anymore. It's building online, and neither of them can stop what happens next. By the time the closing music begins to rise inside the View studio, something irreversible has already happened. It's subtle, invisible to the casual daytime viewer. But everyone in that room feels it. The applause sign flashes, and the audience claps, loud, sustained, almost cathartic. Not the polite applause of a promotional segment. This is different. This is the sound of people who just witnessed something unscripted. Unfiltered. Real. Whoopi Goldberg turns toward the camera for the final wrap-up, voice steady as ever. Thank you, Chris, for being here. No edge. No sarcasm. Just calm acknowledgement. Chris Hemsworth nods once. Thank you for the conversation. Not thanks for having me. The distinction doesn't go unnoticed. The music swells. Cameras pan wide. The broadcast fades to commercial. And then the red light goes dark. The audience begins to buzz immediately, no longer whispering, but openly reacting. That was intense. I didn't expect that. Did she go too far? No, he handled it well. Phones are already out. Fingers are flying across screens. Clips are being trimmed in real time. Back at the table, Chris stands. He smooths down his blazer, exhales slowly, and offers Whoopi his hand. She looks at it for half a beat. Then she shakes it. Firm. Direct. No hard feelings, she says quietly off mic. None, he replies. But both of them know something shifted. Not hostility. Visibility. Producers gather quickly, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. One of them mutters, "That's going to trend." Another simply says, "It already is." Outside the studio, the internet is detonating. Within minutes, hashtags begin climbing. Hashtag Whoopi versus Chris. Hashtag The View Clash. Hashtag Vulnerability or Brand. Short clips slice the conversation into sharp, viral fragments. Whoopi saying, "Vulnerability sells." Chris replying, "That's a cynical way to look at it." Whoopi, "Fame changes honesty." Chris, "It doesn't make it fake." 10-second clips. 15-second reactions. Faces frozen mid-expression with bold captions splashed across them. Some accounts crown Whoopi fearless, a veteran unafraid to challenge Hollywood's polished machine. Others declare Chris the embodiment of grace under pressure, a man defending his integrity in hostile territory. News outlets pick it up before the hour is over. Entertainment blogs run headlines. Did Whoopi go too far? Chris Hemsworth's most uncomfortable interview yet. Live TV tension leaves audience divided. Cable panels debate it by evening. Commentators dissect body language. He tightened his jaw right there. Look at Whoopi's pause before she said machine. That was deliberate. By nightfall, reaction videos flood YouTube. Some creators replay the moment frame by frame. He was cornered. No, he was evasive. She was projecting. He was deflecting. And somewhere between the noise and the narrative, the actual conversation begins to blur. Back at his hotel suite, Chris sits alone for the first time all day. The city lights spill through the window. His phone vibrates relentlessly on the table beside him. Messages from friends, from publicists, from fellow actors. You okay? Handled that like a pro. Call me. He scrolls. He sees support. He sees criticism. He sees strangers debating whether his vulnerability was authentic or engineered. For a moment, he just stares at the screen. Then he locks it. Because here's the truth no headline captures. Both of them were right. And both of them were wrong. Whoopi wasn't attacking him. She was interrogating the system. Chris wasn't defending a brand. He was defending his humanity. But in a culture addicted to sides, nuance doesn't trend. Conflict does. The next morning, the clip airs again on national news. This time slowed down. Zoomed in. The moment Chris says, "It feels like it," in response to questioning his integrity. The moment Whoopi says, "Discomfort reveals truth." People replay those seconds again and again. Psychologists weigh in. Media analysts write op-eds about the monetization of vulnerability. Fitness influencers defend Chris. Cultural critics defend Whoopi. And somewhere in the middle, regular viewers admit something surprising. They liked it because it felt real. Not polished. Not rehearsed. Real. By the end of the week, the moment becomes one of the most watched daytime talk show clips of the year. Not because of shouting. Not because of insults. But because two powerful figures refuse to retreat into safe territory. A few days later, Whoopi addresses it briefly on air. She looks into the camera and says, "Conversations aren't attacks. They're opportunities. No apology. No backtracking. Just clarity." And Chris? He posts a simple message online. Grateful for honest dialogue. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. The comment section explodes again. Some call it classy. Others call it calculated. The cycle continues. But here's what lingers long after the hashtags fade. The image of two people sitting across from each other, choosing not to explode, choosing instead to push. That's rarer than outrage. That's rarer than scandal. Because real tension isn't about shouting. It's about exposure. And for a few unforgettable minutes on live television, the armor slipped. Not shattered, not destroyed, but opened just enough for millions to see the humans underneath the headlines. And now we turn to you. Was Whoopi right to challenge him so directly? Was Chris justified in feeling cornered? Or was this exactly what public conversations should look like? Uncomfortable, layered, honest? Drop your opinion in the comments right now. I want to know which side you're on, or if you think there shouldn't be sides at all. And if you live for moments like this, raw celebrity tension, unfiltered clashes, and the stories behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to Stage View and turn on notifications. Because when the spotlight heats up and the masks begin to slip, we'll be right here, watching.